Well, hi everybody again, and welcome to Coffee with Craig. I'm your host, Craig Hamilton-Parker. I'm a psychic medium. And if you come to the show, you know that we talk here all about what's happening in the world at the moment. Today's theme is going to be primarily about who controls things in the background, and particularly some of our thoughts and concerns about the advent of identity cards, particularly here that are happening in the UK, and the power of artificial intelligence as well to control our lives and globalism. And I'll also talk a bit about what's just happened in another horrible terror attack here in the UK in Manchester on Yom Kippur. I mentioned some of those things as well, and various other things that are happening in the press with lots of psychic insights and predictions and so on. And we're live today. So this is for your live questions as well. So welcome to Coffee with Craig. Well, again, welcome to the show. And don't forget, if you're here for the first time, do please follow the show. You might enjoy the commentaries we get and the comments if you come back and have another look at us later on. And do join in and add your comments. And in particular, it don't take much. Give me a thumbs up if you don't mind, please, guys. Every time you see one of my videos, I always appreciate it, even if you come many, many times, because it helps that dreaded algorithm. Right, this week I think I get the date right. I gave you the wrong date last week. I was a month ahead of myself. We're the 2nd of October today, making some of the predictions on the show today. Although it's not primarily a prediction show as such today. I'll have a few predictions in today, but we'll be getting a lot more prediction shows coming up in the coming months, of course, because we're coming up to 2026, and I'll be making my predictions for 2026, as well as some of these short-term predictions that we've been talking about. The plan today is to talk a bit about digital ID in the UK, because that's a big issue, I feel, and I want to give you some insights into that. And I want to talk about the influence of that, what I call a control freaks, particularly Tony Blair, and his influence now in the Middle East. And I think that's one of the things that who else is controlling us in the background and wants to sort of bring in the forces of globalism and mass migration and so forth. And I'll also give you a chance in the show today to participate in what we're doing with, well, we're just kind of helping sponsor in some ways, a world peace yagna or homa that's going on in India. And there'll be some the information that in the description. And I'll give you some updates about what's been happening with Craig's AI systems and things as well. So it's a conversational sort of day today, as much as anything. And thank you all for coming in on the side there. We're live, as you know, and I'm just, all the hellos are coming in, but I won't go clicking on you all now, guys, because it'll take a bit of time up. But thank you so much for all your lovely comments and your super stickers coming in, I see there. Well, that's very good of you. So lots been happening this week, and we've had, in particular, as I'm go breaking with this today, there's breaking news just hitting the television at the moment about a dreadful terror attack in Manchester in England, on Yom Kippur in a synagogue. Again, this is kind of, much of this is in line with what I was saying at the beginning of the year about the terrible social unrest that 2025 would have, not just in the UK, but also around Europe and Germany and France. And actually, I believe they've had actually 9 attacks on synagogues in France, if I'm right with that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's the case. There's been so many of these awful attacks, and really it's a bit of a breakdown of our society, some of that, isn't it? And and that just to give some thoughts about that before we go off onto the rest of the show, because from the little I've seen, that there was a plan there, that there was a children's special event going on in that synagogue. I mean, there was open to all types of all peoples of age groups there, but how dreadful, a children's special event going on there. And the guy was going in, I don't know, you might not have seen the breaking news yet, but the guy was there with a bomb vest, and a much sanitized version on mainstream news, but X was showing it all happening with people dead on the floor and things like this. So what is going on in our world? And this type of thing, of course, is a good reason for people to come in and say, that's why we need ID cards. We need to know who's who and so forth. So we'll address some of those sticky ideas as I move through the show here today. And my thought about that, just, I mean, it needs another show for this, really, to talk about that in any proper detail. But it is kind of in the theme of partly where I'm going to be going later with my talk here today, because how can we ever sort those things out? And, let me just seed this idea to you, because it was it was one of those thoughts that came to me. This atrocity. The camera blipped there, so I'll just say it again. This atrocity that we've just seen, fortunately, as far as I'm aware, not many have been killed, but another horrible attempt. But these type of things make me question the whole idea of religion, and whether religions can be called a religion in an individual country. Do you know what I do? And this is crazy, and it's just perhaps bonkers thoughts in some respects. I would take away the rights of being a religion if any religion uses violence against other religions or other people, and it is not clamped down on and seen to be clamped down on by those that do it. So any religions that starts waving crusader flags, for example, saying we're crusaders for this religion, and then takes an attack on another religion, that religion should have its status taken away. Same particularly at the moment with this, what's happening at the moment with Islam. If Islam is killing people and it's not being clamped down on and jumped on by the leaders of that religion, I mean, we should be seeing them jumping on this and saying how terrible it is. And these are our brothers in arms. They're not infidels or whatever. When that happens, then we should start seeing it. Is that really a religion? Or is that now become a political organization? And therefore, should we now treat it for tax status and uniforms and so forth as a political organization? That's just my thoughts. No bells or chanting or calls from the towers to come to prayer, because you're no longer a prayer organization. And until you can change that, then you're a political organization, until that changes, and then swip it around and give them back the religious rights again once they got it under control. And that could apply to all religions that do this by country. You could never impose it, of course, worldwide, and a fantasy of mine in some respects, but in principle, surely we should be saying this is a problem. And it's not the individual people within Islam, because this is clearly an Islamic attack, because it was bomb vests and had all the hallmarks of that. And I might be jumping to conclusions there, so forgive me if I'm wrong. And it's nothing to do with the individual worshippers of any of these religions, because obviously, we can't prejudge every Muslim to say, you're a bad person because of what's happened, but some other idiot's done. Obviously not. And similarly, we can't judge all the Jews in this country because what might be going on in Gaza. But I think you've got to look at it and say, look, the dangers of religion, and you can't have all this religious advantages if any religion is breaking the rules of non-violence. I mean, the bedrock of Gandhi's teachings was ahimsa, which is non-violence. The bedrock of Jesus's teaching, and remember, Jesus is also in Islam, and Muhammad's teaching are always non-violence at core, or they should be. And any religion, Buddha taught compassion, and so on and so on. You know, if you can't take that as a fundamental thing, if a religion doesn't show the power of love, then it's not a religion. It now becomes something else, and it should be treated legally as something else. Anyway, I don't mean that as any slate against any of those, you know, proper people, but because these are obscure minorities that destroy this. But the problem is it has become a pandemic in many cultures, and there is a growing sort of rise of calls for Christianity in the UK and the USA, and that could be just as dangerous, because that can turn into another hate movement if you're not careful. It's not at the moment, but it could do. So we've got to always look to the spirituality of things and get rid of this cultism that's around with any religion, and it should apply equally to all religions. But if you're in your country, if you're in Germany, or you're in France, or you're in the UK, or you're in the USA, and you're seeing terrorism done on behalf of your religion, then it's no longer for a period of time a religion, until that can be seen and perhaps even voted by the public to say, okay, have your rights back. I mean, it's bonkers what I'm saying. Obviously it's never going to happen, but it's just a thought, isn't it? It's a thought about the way things are going. So that was my first thing, because it was one of those things that kind of made me think when I saw that today. So I just wonder, and of course now, you know, let's pray that all the religions of the world begin to understand that there is only one God, and that whatever form you worship it in, it's the one God, isn't it? Even if you have multiple gods, like the Hindus will say, oh, they're multiple expressions of the one God. Or Buddhism doesn't strictly call it a God, but calls it nirvana, which is like the absolute abstract state of God existence. Or in Christianity, it would be, you know, not me, but my Father in heaven. There is the one God. And in Jehovah, and Judaism, and so on and so on and so on, with all the religions of the world, there's only this idea of one God. And what is that one God? That one God is love, you know. And until we say that, then we're not a religion, if we haven't got that fundamental thing behind it. And love doesn't throw bombs, love doesn't shoot people, love doesn't persecute other religions or other peoples. It comes with tolerance, you know. Anyway, I've gone off already, haven't I? And I haven't even started. I haven't even looked at them. I've got some notes on the screen of what I'm going to talk about today. But that was one of the things that struck me, and I think it's important. All of us look, and what can we do about it is obviously the important thing. It's all right blabbing your mouth off and saying these things like I do and others do. We've got to actually become those things. We've got to become embodiments of love. And whatever religion you are, you must embody the things that you say you believe in. So if you believe in non-violence, then you should try to embody it. And we're imperfect people, all of us, but we should embody those ideals and try to act and live by it if best we can, which is not an easy path. And that's what sadhana is. That's what spiritual work is. It's about developing ourselves to become like that, isn't it? You know. Yeah. so I've already gone off. And anyway, let me go back. So let's get back to the predictions and things. Also, just before I go on, a little bit in newsy things too. I mentioned, you know, I've got my AI Oracle going on in the background out there. We just launched it, and thanks to some of you that have tested it, a lot of you have actually, and been on it, and some pretty good results. If you still want to have a shot at it, we've got another one out there at the moment. So I'll mention it at the end. I'll mention a bit at the end, so you can. But it's cool if you can use a new code called Week Free. And have a look in the description below for craigsoracle.com, and then you can put that in and have another shot at it. So I promised I'd mention that at the start of the show. Anyway, look, predictions. All right, let me just refresh. So I'm going to be talking about the Yom Kippur problem that we've had here in Manchester in the UK, and what a terrible thing that was. And I've been mentioning about the awful attack that's happened here in the UK. And it's part of what I predicted already about social unrest happening in this country, and the breakdown of the law and order in the UK, in Germany and France and places that I foresaw last year that would happen this year. I also mentioned about the air collision, and I showed you an image there which got missed. Which happened on the 2nd of October in New York City. And strangely, there was also another one in Moscow airport that was not widely reported. And this happened a few days after I made the prediction. So that was one thing. And also, I spoke about Elon Musk. And I don't know if you saw this, but I said about Elon Musk would go through a sort of a spiritual transformation in his life, and that's kind of been happening. But I also, you remember last week, mentioned about Elon Musk and saying that he would have he would set up his own movie studio. And we've just had breaking news saying that he's attacking Netflix and his LGBTQ XYZ stuff slant after director Hamish Steele mocked the killing of Charlie Kirk. So that was a bit of a nuisance for him, wasn't it? And so he's got angry about that. And it could be, couldn't it? It could be that we might see very shortly Elon Musk having a go at Netflix by setting up his own movie company, and maybe we will see some of those movies that I spoke about before coming to light. So that's kind of happening as we speak. I just want to check we're getting sound, guys. You're still getting the sound now, aren't you? Yes, we are. Right, that's great. Okay, I can see your comments now as I'm talking to you here. So that's a little recap of what I was saying there. So sorry about that. We do get the blips, but that's what happens on a live show, doesn't it? Sometimes. I'll see if I can cut that bit out later on when I go back, and you can edit bits out on for YouTube for the rest of you later. Anyway, so those were the predictions. But I had a prediction lined up today because I saw. I was going to say I saw an attack with guns. And then today it's broken as we've happened. But I still think this is a prediction that I want to make for the time ahead, because I saw it was a very vivid sort of dream, actually, that I saw this. So I think I want to share this with you because it was so out of the blue again. And I thought, what on earth is that? It can't relate it to anything that's happening in my life or things that I've watched on telly or anything like that. It's not something, it seems to have come out of my unconscious mind. And I saw 4 men with guns on a train. Okay. So is something going to be associated with 4 men with guns, and it's a train that's involved somehow. Now, I don't fully know what this was all about, but as you know from some of my other predictions, they sometimes come a bit unformed like this, and these become kind of the most interesting ones because it becomes clearer later, because I'm not making predictions about known things in the press at the moment. This is something that comes out of the blue. And the funny thing is, it was an old style train, so I suspect that if anything happens with this, it seems like the unconscious mind is pointing me to somewhere that might have trains like that, perhaps not such a well-developed country as Europe and Australia and America and so forth. So could I be seeing something with the Middle East here? Because I'm going to talk a bit about the Middle East in a moment as well. And could there be perhaps another assassination attempt, perhaps? I saw 4 men on trains, and there was a feeling of an assassin sort of feel with this. And there was a feeling of the Middle East with this. And there was a feeling with a peace plan of some sort. So is something going to happen? Is there an attack on some high-ranking person in perhaps with new Middle East talks or something that's going to throw things into further chaos again? And indeed, when we start seeing what happened today in the UK, I could now question to myself, is that one of 4? Because there's one gunman that went in to try to disrupt the Middle East peace plan, as it were, in some respects. Could there be 4 of them? That's how I feel after the breaking news as we came on today, how I feel that could have been happening. Anyway, the main theme today I want to talk about is some of the hidden forces that control us. And one that's recently come to light is Tony Blair. He was one of the first people to push really hard for digital IDs. And in my opinion, he's a real control freak. You know, he was the Prime Minister of the UK, you'll remember, in America, from about 2004 to 2010. And he tried to bring in this idea of Identity Cards Act in 2006, which would have created a national identity card and a database for sort of personal information and so forth. And since leaving office, this guy's he's repeatedly urged the UK government to adopt digital ID systems, and especially after what happened in COVID. And they argue that they're kind of essential for security and essential for governance, right? So here we see in the UK another restriction on our freedom being slipped in. Meanwhile, he's also cuddling up to Trump and saying, I can fix the Middle East. I sorted out the peace accords in Northern Ireland. I'm sure I can do something. You know, in my opinion, the absolute worst snake in the grass you could possibly have is there now, causing a potential. I think he caused chaos in the Middle East. So this is part of my predictions. You know, although Blair might be taking a leading role in the proposed Gaza International Transitional Authority and so forth, that's essentially acting as an interim sort of administration for Gaza under a peace plan backed by Trump. Blair is going to be the one that messes it up. And I think Trump's going to eventually see through Tony Blair. He's going to see him as up there with the Lord Mayor of London. You know, he'll see him about what his real agenda is, because Blair's always had this globalist agenda. It was Blair that brought in the whole idea of we must bring in millions of people into our country. We must make our country a multicultural country. Long time ago now, if you think back in 2010, now 15 years and more later, we're beginning to see the consequences of these things. So, you know, so I see that, you know, Blair will serve on this board of peace, as they're calling it, and oversee its reconstruction of Gaza idea. But I think it's going to backfire. And I think you're going to start seeing a lot more reasons for it to backfire. And this will be attacks. Now, whether some of these attacks are false flags that people sometimes think, I don't believe that's the case. I believe there are going to be various attacks that are going to completely disrupt this whole peace system, and soon, before the end of the year, before the end of 2025, because I'm trying to focus on before the end of 2025. And the authority that's supposed to be backed by an international force with the removal of Hamas from governance. It's not going to happen, guys. I don't see it happening. I predict that something's going to go very, very wrong with this very soon. And Trump has been misguided about Blair. We remember also how Tony Blair and Bush got together and left the Middle East in flames with lots of lies of weapons of mass destruction and so on. The Good Friday Agreement that happened in Ireland, that's going to fall apart soon too, I feel, because it'll have to be replaced with something new, because as we begin to relook at the laws that govern Britain when we leave the systems that govern the European laws over Britain, that's a little bit way ahead, but that's eventually going to have to happen as well. So Blair is an absolute failure in my book, and someone that I think is always going to stick his nose into things when he shouldn't. And so I feel that the Middle East is going to experience more significant turmoil soon. Sorry, because we're all hoping for peace there, but bringing in Blair is an absolute mad idea. It's a mad decision. It won't work. I see Israeli troops, actually, and I mentioned it before, I see Israeli troops pouring into the West Bank. It's going to be completely the opposite to what they're hoping for. And I feel Donald Trump from this is going to get egg on his face, as it were. And I see that the long term, Trump will have to drop Blair. But I do see that eventually they will broker a deal. And it will be a good deal. It will be a good deal in the Middle East in due course. And the hostages will eventually be released, but not right now and not at this time with Tony Blair trying to do the deals. Saudi Arabia will be the ones that broker the deal in the end. They're the ones that will cement the deal. They'll be even bigger than Trump's influence ultimately. I feel that Saudi Arabia is going to save the day in many ways there. So those are some of my thoughts. Hopefully you're still all hearing me, guys. Yes, we can hear me. Yeah, I was going to scroll down and see some of your comments because I was missing a lot of those earlier on. Yeah, we're still all right, aren't we? We're all plenty of comments there. So thanks. I'll put some of your comments up later on as we move along, because obviously I need to concentrate on what I'm saying first of all. And now we're talking here about, who controls the world and things like this. But one of the forces that should be controlling the world, it should be us. And it should be our spiritual attitude that should be helping to control the world a bit, as it were. So I just want to sort of remind you to have another look in the description, but this time have a look in there also for what we're doing with a Homa, what's called a yagna, which is like a fire ceremony. It's like a world meditation type thing that is done to bring world peace. Those of you that have been interested in the NAADIs through me and things like that will know about the importance of these things. So you might have had one done for yourself, but there's one being done by another NAADI reader friend of mine. It's doing it there in India, and the link is in the description. You can go and have a look at that. It's a bit awkward time of day because it's done in Indian times, but it's all listed there. And you can donate, but I think it's too late to donate now. But even if you haven't donated, you will still get benefit from it and still get help from it. And I'd like to do a few more of this type of things ultimately, because as one of you are saying there on the side there, love always wins. And this is the way we find peace and harmony in the world. Like I say, there's only one God. That's the thing. There's only one religion, and that's the religion of love. And that's something that I feel is so important that we try to remember when we try to find peace and harmony in the world. Like I've said, we can't bring together all these different religions of the world, and unless we can find the common denominators, and the common denominator must be love, and we must embody that and make that part of ourselves. So, but also these things that bring us together, even if we're not of that religion, as it were, because that's a Hindu thing I've described there, they can still be of benefit to us, right? So, and yeah, so there we go. And also, actually, talking of the NAADIs, Dr. Q had some good news because his little baby's been born. We're called Barney. So those of you that know Dr. Q, lovely news, that beautiful. Everything went all right in the end after a bit of a difficult birth, I believe. But anyway, that's a little bit of extra news. Right, so that now brings me on a long kind of roundabout way to the main topic that I wanted to talk about today, which is the dangers of digital ID, because we have here coming in digital ID here in the UK. Well, it's not confirmed yet. It's got to go through Parliament, and that's going to be one hell of a battle. I don't think it will get through in the end. I predict ultimately it won't get through. But we have to think about the potentials of this, because they're trying again, just like I said with Tony Blair. The whole idea of the left wing, as it were, is that they like to gain total control over society. We know best, and it crushes the whole human spirit, and people like Tony Blair that I mentioned before love it, but those who love freedom hate it. And there's some reasons why. Actually, it has some good points, and this is how they first tried to sell it to us. It'd be nice if people could not hide, for example, behind false profiles like here on the internet. We get the horrible thing of keyboard warriors and trolls and things like that plague YouTube, or the catfishes who trick lonely people out of their savings. We want to get more sense of who you are, right? Stop hiding behind these false identities. So yeah, okay, can start seeing why we want to reveal who people are and keep an ID of some sort. And the debate here in the UK is that it could help with all sorts of things, particularly illegal migration, the very thing that Blair brought in, the mass migration. It's not just illegal migration, it's over migration that upsets people here. And there's been riots in Australia, and there's been upsets in Canada. And Canada, actually, they learned the lesson about what can happen if you've got too much if they know too much about you, when they had all the trucker strikes, they just turned off their bank accounts, didn't they? So this is very much a left-wing thing that was again brought up by that other left-wing control freak, Emmanuel Macron, because he talked to Starmer and they started chatting. He said, well, you can't sort migration out unless you get an ID card. Oh, that's a simple idea. Let's go for that. Let's sell it to the country. And of course, it would be so easy if we all had IDs, because it could all bring together all under one government-backed ID, the BRIC card, the wonderful BRIC card. Sounds great, right? Doesn't it? What could possibly go wrong with that? What could possibly go wrong? Well, there's a lot that could go. There's a lot that could go wrong, including my camera there. We've had some real gremlins today. And it won't solve illegal immigration. Not in the slightest, will it? It's a complete waste of time to think you can do that, because everything's done in the black economy, cash in hand. It's the black economy. Everybody loves that. That's how the illegal immigrants into this country pay for their illegal crossings. You come across on the boat and you pay later. They've got no money in their pocket over there. But once you're over here, you can come and you can pay. We have lots of convenient hairdressers and nail bars and other spurious organizations where you can go and bring us your cash and we'll send it back to the shippers, right? and it's all in plain sight, you know. And so will an ID card sort that out? And we've got lots of special agencies who will turn a blind eye to the paperwork and turn a blind eye for the checks and put you in an agency. And then people like these delivery companies can say, oh, well, we got it from an agency. We don't look at the IDs. They look at the IDs for us. So we put an in-between man so we can get as many illegal people working for us as possible. You know, chicken shops. I see you all having a go there, you know. You know, all this type of thing, all our high streets are held together by this, aren't they? So they're not going to look at an ID card when they can already look for a national insurance number, or they could ask for a passport. You know, and this is a dangerous thing. That's, you know, America's had exactly the same problem with all this sort of thing under Biden, didn't you? People pouring in, working in the black economy, not paying tax, but all voting Democrat. And the same things happen here, not paying tax, but all voting Labour. We want Labour in. Of course we do. You know, bring in more voters. You know, so it's a clever way to wave people through as well, this ID card, isn't it, really? Give them a card, then we don't have to fill them in hotels. Just give them a card, and give them an ID card. Say it's temporary ID card. And now the hotels are empty. At least that problem's out the way. We can say with great candor that here we are, we've sorted out the problem of the migrant hotels, you know. And it's convenience, isn't it? This is the danger. We get sucked in by convenience. It's a very, very dangerous way that people get reeled in. It happens in our life all the time. We see it all the time. Every time we click those little you know, scroll through the terms and conditions and click the little bit thing at the bottom, yes, I agree, click, we allow them to take all our information about us. This is about companies when you're online and on websites and so forth, and little by little they get complete knowledge. They know more about our movements and what we do, what we spend our money on, what our disposable income is, and so on, all found out little at a time. They grind freedom away a little bit at a time. And here we are in the UK, and people like Keir Starmer, who's the most hated politician of all time, and it's documented as that now, are saying have this far left government idea that the state knows best. It's the same idea we find in the Democrats in America, in the USA, and it's the same idea basically we see in George Orwell's 1984. And it's a worldwide problem, this left-wing agenda, because it's been taken up a lot by big business too. And I'll come to that in a minute too, because some of these things that are happening are global, and they're global partly because of globalism, right? Now, I don't know if you've looked up, and if you haven't looked it up, do a search on social credit system in China. Find out, see some videos about it, and find out what it's all about in detail. But here's partly what happens when you get the idea of a digital idea base. In China, they have a social credit system, and it decides your trustworthiness, as it were. This can include things, this is a digital ID that can include things like your financial status, your legal things, social and moral behaviors as well, right? So in a way, what it does, it rewards systems for trustworthy behavior. Great idea, isn't it? Great idea. If you're a drunk, well, then you can't go on to you can't drive a car. So we take that status away from you. If you're violent or dangerous, you can't do this or that. You can't go on public transport systems and so forth. We look at your trustworthiness, and we do this for every member of society. You can, it will decide whether you can have access to loans, whether you can have access to jobs, whether you can travel, whether you can get public services, whether you can get social security. It would be in this country if we did it, but there's also penalties, of course, for untrustworthiness, of course. So this can include, you can deny a person rail tickets or plane tickets. You can stop them having loans. In China, if you've got untrustworthiness on your ID, they will actually put your face up in a public place for public shaming as well. True, it really goes on. Go and check out some of the videos out there about this. And it will put restrictions on your children's schooling and all sorts of things like that. So the system promotes all sorts of compliance by publicizing blacklists and red lists. They have two, for good scores and bad scores, and which encourages citizens out there and businesses to modify behavior in line with government standards. Do we want that here in the UK? And would this solve our migrant problem and the criminals in the migrant hotels? I mean, you're making some pretty good comments here already in the live comments, guys. But if you come onto the show later, please put your comments below, because I think it's quite an important issue. This, would it solve any of the real problems having this system? But this is what they're trying to push in. People like Tony Blair, who I've come back to again, who's now in charge of the Middle East, is encouraging all this sort of nonsense, and then it's not going to go away, and of course you could catch any crook this way, particularly when you build it all in with the incredible surveillance system we've got in this country. Did we vote for having a surveillance system that could track us all across London or any major city? You got it in America too. Spot your face. Now we can actually recognize who it is. We can find out who you are. This is a very, very dangerous thing. And in the hands of the Communist Party, of course, the Chinese Communist Party, it's already being used terribly. And that's presumably why the government do love to bring on board so much Chinese technology and internet services and all the rest of it, and Chinese infrastructure. Marvelous. We can all benefit from the same system the Chinese use. We should call out, just as we should call out religions, as I said before. A religion isn't a religion if it does violence. It's a political party if it does violence, and we should take away the rights to be a religion. And it's the same thing here in many ways when it comes to all these other issues. We should call out if a country's not a democracy and is not supporting democracy, we shouldn't buy its products, frankly. Anyway, I'm going on and gone off. But you imagine what London would be like this, Trump loved Sajid Khan, didn't he? He really gave him a slam when he came over here. But, but first step, encourage everybody to give us their data, that's easy enough. We know how to do that. Step two, gradually make it impossible to function without that digital data. So we can't use the digital platforms. Remove the practice of using cash, for example. Do you use cash much nowadays, any of you? Such a danger when we don't have cash to fall back on, because that's our safeguard against these things. And we mask all of this under the guise of being convenient, so convenient. And then we can bring it all under one system, the BRIC card, and government can control it because we can trust the government, and you don't have to worry. It's all in one place, and we can have complete control over you, And you imagine how far this could go, right? I mean, the Chinese have shown to us today that capitalism can thrive under communism. Can't it? Capitalism thrives under communism. So the big global companies now don't give a damn about democracy. We're only worried about money. Yeah, okay, we can work even under a communist regime. What does it matter? And there's a danger, isn't it? This is why I think so many global companies are still jumping on this same bandwagon with all these other things that are attached to this kind of hidden agenda that's going on in the world. The card, the identity card, particularly if it's AI driven, is probably one of the biggest threats that we can have in the future. But global companies really would love to see this. Now, you imagine if you were to take this another step further. Well, I think how well this Chinese system could work if it was controlled by Sharia law, for example. Perhaps we should decide to have that on our ID systems, right? Yesterday, Afghanistan switched off the internet for some political reason or so. I'm not sure. The news didn't tell us any more about that, but they switched it all off. Something was happening in Afghanistan, so they just turned off the internet. Now, you imagine the power and control you could have if you didn't just switch it off, but you could switch it off to multiple individuals rather than just some individuals. Let some have access, but some not. And supposing instead of having the system that I described in China, we had a religious credit system. Imagine if we had that instead, a religious credit system. So if you're caught drinking, you can't use public transport. If you don't wear a headscarf, you can't use the shops. If you're an infidel, we'll cut off your bank account. It just shows how dangerous these systems could become and how dangerous a system could be here. So Keir Starmer, Tony Blair, Sajid Khan, and all those people that love state control, they should listen carefully, I think, to this type of thing. Brick cards and control of data could demolish our societies, could demolish our countries and make it worse than the Blitz. What we got to do is nothing wrong with data. The danger is who has control of that data. I don't have control of my data. On my website, I don't have control of my data. If I put a little Google thing in there so I can get my Google Analytics, Google knows no more about me than I do, my company. Same with us as individuals. They all know more about us than we do ourselves. They know about what we bought in the shops 15 years ago, So it's going down a slippery path, I feel. And I think it's important out of this sort of talk today to remember that freedoms are taken away, not all of a sudden. They're taken away little bit at a time, very slowly. They chip at it a bit at a time. Nobody here in the UK asks for a multicultural society. I've never heard of a vote for that. Nobody said, look, we want to change Britain into a multicultural society. Nobody wanted our data to be controlled by big businesses. But now, big businesses know more about us than we do. There's been massive social changes, but they've happened very, very slowly. And also, I would add, deliberately, because there are forces behind it that see benefit for themselves in this. And I think businesses understood that there's benefit for us in this. Look at the way they tried to pull down Liz Truss in this country, in the UK, as soon as they knew that there was going to be a potential change in the status quo. We'll just pull the carpet straight away. And I've been trying to resist by using cash sometimes, but it is so difficult. I mean, today at Tesco's, for example, I bought some items, but the price was significantly higher if I hadn't used my Tesco's club card. They made vast profits, you'll see, recently. Their profits have been shooting up. But I think it's partly to do with this. This is their own little social credit system, isn't it, really? Give us your data or we'll punish you. Disguised, of course, as a benefit that we can all benefit from. Oh, we're such a good company. We give you such a lovely discount. But you've got to use that card. We've got to have your details. We've got to know everything about you, haven't we? So it's not the data that's the problem. It's who controls the data that is the problem. The data needs to be kept by us locally on our own little card that we can use or not use if we want to. Our own little digital ID that we can say, okay, only I have that digital ID. And if I want Amazon to know what I bought before, then I can put it in, but they can hold no data about me whatsoever. Nobody can hold data without my permission. And that's how it should be. If I want the doctor to have my information, fine, the doctor can have, but I decide. But it's not the case. We have no choice in that. So, and so this could go on. I'm going on a bit, but I'm going to keep going because I think you'll find this interesting, hopefully. How far has it gone already, perhaps? I mean, there's some other interesting ideas that are a little bit kind of bit mind-boggling from this. We already live in a simulation, perhaps already, with all what's going on with this. We're already under control. We're already not even control of our lives. It's a hard thing to prove or disprove, but some people think that this is already a simulation, that we've lost our IDs a long time ago, and we're living in some form of AI world. Elon Musk believes it, and he says it's the most likely scenario, that as societies have advanced, we've digitized ourselves, and we are living, perhaps even, I sometimes think it's quite funny to think we're perhaps just marketing things. The whole thing about Coffee with Craig is who comes on the show and actually buys a cup of coffee when you have a when you watch coffee. You'd never see me drink any. I better drink some for the digital masters. And it could just be a big marketing exercise. David Icke's a funny one too, because he always takes easy even further. He really goes over the edge with ideas, but they're interesting sometimes to explore. And he says that even the spirit world is an illusion because that's been digitized as well, he says. And when you die, don't go into the light, he says. He says the Native Americans say that you mustn't go into the light because the digital illusion of the matrix is determined by the speed of light. He quotes a number of things about quantum entanglement and things like that, and that one particle can change faster instantaneously, therefore it's faster than the speed of light. He's gone on about things like that, which is actually wrong in terms of physics. Actually, this is what Einstein was talking about when he talked about spooky action at a distance. But David Icke's got it wrong, I think, with that, because you need to check things like Bell's theorem tests. Anyway, I'm going off, but it could be, it's an interesting thought experiment that even this world and the next, and I am purely channeling information that's coming through the matrix. Who knows, and this is where we just don't know where we are in life in many respects. But coming back to normal materialistic reality, I think is quite important that we do really think very, very carefully about the way we approach all these things. And obviously my interest is in AI quite a lot lately, and this is why these talks have gone off on these strange delusionary sort of rants sometimes, because obviously I've been developing Craig's Oracle, and it's made me think a lot about it, and I just briefly sort of just give you a little upgrade on that now, because it's been kind of really paramount in. I'm not an AI developer or anything like that. I couldn't code my way out of a rice pudding, but I mean, the guys that I'm working with are coders, but I'm trying to put the moral codes into this, and this is where I think we need moral codes in our own world as well for this. But anyway, thanks for all of you that have been actually testing it for us, because we put a freebie out there, and you've been on the, I think you quite enjoyed it, but understanding hopefully that we're trying to get a good moral values behind it, a bit like the way Asimov sort of brought up the idea of the rules of robot rules and so forth like that. But in a similar way, these type of psychological, spiritual type of guidance systems need to be very, very careful in the way you handle things. But you can also have a shot at it now if you want, actually, because it's still out there. You can have a look in. I just got on where we got. Where am I? I can do. Yeah, you can go and God, I need someone helping me with this sometimes. I'll put up a little QR code in the corner there. If you go on the QR code, or you look in the description of the video here today, there is another freebie you can do. You've got another code you can put in called Week Free in all capital letters. So go and have a look at that if you want to have another shot at it. This time they ask you for your details rather than just it's just a completely open one. You can always cancel if you don't want to continue with it, or if you start to really enjoy it. Obviously, the plan is, the secret plan is, you want to join it for long term and to become a subscriber long term, which I hope you will, because it is very, very interesting. Just on it too, while I'm talking, if you do go and have another shot at it, do try to remember how to use it, because have a chat with it first about what you're thinking about, and then to frame the question and say, now this is the question I'd like to ask, right? Because it gets to know where you're thinking, what you're thinking, then it can deepen its interpretation. It's using other oracles in the background, but you kind of also have to teach it. That's why we're giving you multiple goes on it this time, so that you can find out what a interesting thing it can be. So talk to it, chat to it, explain your situation, and then it will actually then consult oracles in the background, particularly the I Ching, which I find is the most powerful one, and that will also then start to interpret and give you some guidance on the way ahead in your life. God, I've been going on today, haven't I? But let's have a look at some of your questions now, right? I see there's you've been loads and loads of comments. It looks like you've been enjoying it, guys. Let's have a look what else you've got there. Very good. I just see I can't do private readings on these shows, guys. Thank you for I'd love to help, and you know, we've had some losses ourselves recently, and I know how hard it is, but they can only be done to one. But you know, so unfortunately, yeah. What else we come? Very specific. Let's have a look. Actually, some of you started a few questions earlier on. I started a few before it started getting a bit crazy. Oh, that's kind. Thank you. Thank you very much. I always appreciate it if you support the channel like that. Thank you. That's a super sticker, they call those. And also those of you that can also support the channel when it comes to becoming a oh, here we go. My brain. I'm trying to work this at the same time. If you become a patron, I was just going to put a patron message up there. Where is it? Yeah, so I'll take that one off. You can also, they got a new thing on StreamYard at the moment, so if you want to become a patron, there's the link. Okay, that's also in the description of the video too. But okay, thank you for supporting us there. That's very kind of you. What cave did Tony Blair crawl out of? He's not done enough damage in one lifetime. All right, great. You're definitely onto that. Is today's attack a false flag? You know, this is always a danger. We do get that, but I don't feel that is. We'll get much more revealed about that. This is the Manchester attack you're talking about here. We'll get much more of that revealed about that soon, I feel. But I feel it is a you know, like I said, maybe there's a group, and it's the four. That's what I was feeling. It's the more to come. Is there going to be some in other countries? Maybe Germany, maybe France. Maybe there's some agenda. Because frankly, if you're a terrorist, the last thing you want is peace. Hamas is not about peace. Hamas is about the total destruction of Israel. So when people go out waving Palestinian flags and so forth on the streets of London and Europe, I think I have to ask myself, what are you waving there? It's not Palestine we're talking about here. We are talking mainly about a terrorist organization that wants to see the total destruction of Israel. Nobody can sort of agree to that at all. So, and to get a solution, you've got to start thinking differently with this. What have you said here? Yeah, you see, I talked about religion, didn't I, a lot, and about the importance of distinguishing the difference between, I don't know what part got cut off on the bit when I was talking earlier. Do you think the end times is being played out in front of us and being orchestrated by Israel and America, i.e. the third temple being built, Israel recognized the heifers being brought into being and so forth? These are all the things that are in Revelation and other Ezekiel as well, and things like this. And also, I would say also with the digital ID, is the digital ID the mark of Cain? You know, would we perhaps have to carry a mark, i.e. could the digital ID be embedded onto us somehow? We could perhaps have a little mark here, a tiny little dot or something like that, that could give our digital ID straight away. These are interesting thoughts. I'm not necessarily don't necessarily believe all the things in Revelation. I think that you need to think deeply about some of the John that was making those pronouncements from where I think I remember what island he was on now, but there's also signs in that he was having a mental breakdown. So I don't know, but it is interesting. It's an interesting thought. Thanks for raising it. Craig, you often mention 2 foreign countries being behind things. Whilst I don't disagree, I think that the more pertinent question is, who is it that people like Blair and Starmer exactly really work for? Well, there does seem to be a left-wing agenda, and I think they work for an ideal in many respects. Is we all want to point the finger, but people like to say, oh, it's the Freemasons, or it's the Illuminati, whoever they might be, or it's people from outer space doing this, or so whatever. But actually, it's an ideal in many respects, and it's still a Marxist agenda. But I often think, these communists that, imagine the power behind the scenes that people like Xi Jinping and Putin and others have. And although they're just an individual man, they've got vast amounts of resources at their personal control, and it doesn't take much for people to get together. A couple of phone calls between people can change the way things go. And money pumped into some of these delusionary sort of organizations with all the people with colored hair and multicolored flags who think they're doing good for the world, when actually they're probably getting money pumped in by far left organizations that are trying to crumble the societies. Because just like Hamas want to see the total destruction of Israel, for some people the destruction, the crumbling of society is much more in their interest in one way or another. Decline, more money can be made sometimes out of decline than it can be made out of advancement of societies. More money for a few individuals, what's that one you're saying there? We can all say no to Blair and Starmer's digital ID. They've been cooking this up for years. It's a big con, lie to be a cashless digital society. And it goes on and on, nothing to do with immigrants. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to solve the immigrant problem with this. No way, not in the slightest, not one immigrant. I mean, they've got this wonderful scheme in place, 1 in, 1 out. We've done 1 person. Brilliant. Very well done. And brought another one back in. It's like having 2 buckets of water in the bath. You take it from that side of the bath, pour it on that side, and there we are. And I take it from that side of the bath. But we still got the same number of people. bonkers idea. And also, like Canada too, you've got the same worries, haven't you? Because they tried to do it, like I said before. Look at what happened with those lorry driver strikes not that long ago, and they turned the bank accounts off, just switched off their bank accounts, and that they could do that now. You imagine what they could do with a full ID card and all linked in together. The idea of the ID card is it brings it into one common button, as it were, that we can press on and off, and okay, well, I think we're pretty much getting there with things now, actually, guys. I'm just trying to get your comments back up again. Here we go, live ones. Yeah. I sincerely hope so. I feel he will get removed. Whether the Labour government will get removed yet, I did make some predictions about this before, so you have to look up on the other ones about what I've said. That ID cards here too. I think Alexander, I think you're in America, aren't you? Because you're getting the same problems all over the world with all this, aren't we? I've made predictions about EU, what will happen. I said it will break up into, and in fact, I'm going back a long way, so you don't have to follow my channel a long way. It break up into 2 main groups in Europe, but it will break up. And I do feel that in Europe and in the UK and around the world, just like we saw many thousands and thousands of people on the streets over all the protests about, over migration. The key has been over migration. It is destroying our societies. I know it's unpopular to say that, but it is. And the problem is there'll be a backlash. And will people think in terms of love and peace when it comes time to address these things? Sadly not. It's trying to be buried under the carpet. And the more we bury stuff, the more it festers and the more it grows and the harder it gets to sort it out. So it's difficult times ahead. Right from now, right into 2030s, we're going to have issues with this. And I'm going to be making later on a few more predictions about the longer term situations in the world as well, you know, and I'm going to be writing a book about that, actually, about the longer term history of the world as I see it, and so forth. Anyway, I've gone on a very long time. I'm sorry about the blip at the beginning. Hopefully I'll be able to hook that out for those of you that have come in after we've gone live. And if I can find the right button, I'm going to say goodbye to you now. And don't forget, have another look in the description, and have a look and go to craigsoracle.com if you want to give it another shot. And just another reminder, it's week 3, all in capitals, for another shot at the Oracle if you want to have another go at it. Okay, thanks for joining me. See you all soon. Bye for now.
If you look back at my earlier predictions, and in particular the predictions I made on the newspaper, the Sun's website, I did actually say on there, the actual words were, there will be a flu epidemic linked to bioterrorism.
And my thoughts are that Liz Truss will make it to the final, be the next PM. I think she will actually have a final battle between her and Rishi Sunak. We've not seen the full end of Boris Johnson either, I tell you. But Rishi Sunak actually will eventually, I feel, be the next leader of the Conservatives. So I think there's going to be a few conflicts that Britain's going to be drawn into, including I think Russia is going to take some moves against Ukraine.
I think she will make it past her platinum jubilee, which comes up this year. But I think after that, we'll see a sudden and quick deterioration in the Queen's health. And I think we might lose the Queen towards the end of 2022. There's going to be a huge backlash from over the Netflix programs and screening, because I feel it comes out at a bad time. Charles will come to become King Charles, but his reign, I feel, will be short.
I said that Prince Charles would be hit by an egg. And of course, there it is, all in the press today. Marvellous person she is. She does something extraordinary that could even put her life a little bit at risk with the way she did this. Okay.
Is there something also there that's not been spoken about fully? Did they also discover something with Kate that wasn't quite right?
A huge swarm of people knocking the doors of Europe and America. And I feel that Ukraine conflict is going to be a kind of a grinding conflict that goes on and on. I also feel that there's something going to happen in the Middle East as well. I feel as if there's going to be a sudden and unexpected thing happen in the Middle East. So I feel they're going to take it into their own hands, and I feel we're going to get a strike from Israel. This is going to be one of the significant things in 2023.
I've said it before and I say it again. I feel Israel, with the help from the USA, will strike the Iranian nuclear facilities.
I said that there would be an earthquake that would shake New York.
At this time, I've been sensing that for a while that there's going to be a big earthquake of some sort, and this could well come up during April period.
I'm seeing a bridge collapsing, actually the whole infrastructure of it going.
I predict something very dark happens to President Joe Biden. He's been pulled from power, sacked, as it were, and quite close to the election time. But I kind of sense it's more to do with illness, perhaps, senility, and people stopping him because of that. So it could even be that a new candidate will run for the presidential nominee. I predict that Trump will win the November 2024 election. And I feel very strongly that the black vote is going to move towards Trump. See him as a sort of a bit of a cool guy. I can't see Trump being put in jail despite what they're throwing at him. I can't see a jail sentence with him. But I get the feeling one of the candidates has an attempt on the candidate's life. Could there have been a plan to assassinate either him or Trump, perhaps?
There's going to be an assassination attempt on Trump, I think, and that will fail. But he might maybe get wounded or something like that.
A hit or attack on our airplanes, on passenger flights or even freight flights. Because I also had at a similar time, I was also seeing this image of helicopters on fire as well.
I seem to see like the west of America on fire and the east of America underwater, huge winds. And I actually saw, just like we had a major problem here in the UK where a tower block went up on fire, I see a tower block deserted.
In Sweden, I saw Stockholm, and I saw the ship there. I think it's called Vasa, and I felt as if there was an attempt to try to set that boat on fire. And there will be mass layoffs. He's going to do to the government what he did to X, which is basically, let's pretty much sack everybody and let's re-employ those that are any good. I feel that Musk and Trump ultimately fall out. So I predict that they'll have a major fallout in the end. And more government control in cryptocurrencies. And you know, I saw this image as well of the Eiffel Tower against the backdrop of burning Paris. Is there a big fire in Paris? That this year I saw big earthquake coming. Now, could that be coming soon? Could that be also coming soon on top of this? Because that was what I was seeing before. And you know, like I say, like that Santa Monica where I thought the pier was going up on fire, that was obviously symbolic perhaps of Santa Monica going up on fire, because the fires are right on the doorstep of Santa Monica, is that there's going to be a major earthquake around both sides of the Pacific Rim. But it is like that. I felt as if there was something, a big plate move that affected right over from America to Japan.